Hello and welcome to another edition of Critical Q&A, the show where I answer your questions based on what you have sent me by email at AskChrisShelton@gmail.com or have left for me in the comments section of my Q&A videos. Thank you very much for inviting me into your home again this week. I am really happy to be here answering your questions. I have a few things to go over, and if you do not care at all about my channel or about, making it a better place or anything, and that's fine if you don't, then you can go ahead and skip ahead. I have started making my Q&A videos into chapters by question, and you can find that in the laid out in the description section below. And YouTube should be automatically sort of chopping up my video, and so you can go ahead and leap to the first question. But if you are interested in some announcements and things about what's going on around here, I am kind of doing a facelift and kind of working on some marketing kind of stuff, promoting my work out there. And I have opened up a TikTok account this last week. Oh my God. If you want to find me on any social media platform, you will now find me under Chris Shelton MSC. That is the name I'm using across all the platforms. So if you look me up on Twitter, if you look me up on Instagram, if you look me up on TikTok or Facebook, you will find me under Chris Shelton MSC. And of course, on Facebook, I have my own personal page, and I have a pro page, which is all about cults, recovery, and coercive control. So that's all out there now, and you can follow me on TikTok if you'd like. I've started posting my critical clips there. I've reformatted them to fit on that format. I'm also uploading them again on Facebook because I kind of went back to the beginning because I realized in coming onto TikTok, they can have videos up to 10 minutes long. And so YouTube Shorts only go for a minute, and there's zero chance that that's going to be changing anytime soon, according to the runners and elders of YouTube. So I won't be posting too many shorts because most of my content doesn't fit in 1 minute blurbs. I don't even know how to do a 1 minute video. I did a couple of them and they just felt very awkward. But 10 minutes, you give me 10 minutes and I can tell you something. And so that's what I have started putting out there on the TikTok account. So I'll just be posting there, on a fairly daily or regular basis there, all my clips and stuff, and put them up on Facebook as well. Instagram has not turned out to be much of a useful platform for me, the way that it's formatted. It really isn't designed for the kind of thing I do, I think. And trying to get videos up on Instagram is next to impossible. So I really don't. I'm there, and I'm happy to follow people and have people follow me there. But it's not a place I've figured out yet as far as how I can help promote my work or put stuff out there that people will be interested in. Now, the other thing I want to tell you all about is I am considering some name changes and title changes to some of my longer content, some of the stuff I've had out for a long time, and specifically starting with my podcast, the Sensibly Speaking podcast. It doesn't really communicate that I'm talking about cults or even critical thinking when I have a title like Sensibly Speaking Podcast. That could mean pretty much anything. And while I like the title, and I always thought that I was doing sensible speaking on it, it really doesn't, at all communicate to people who are looking for cultic, coercive control material that this is what this podcast covers. And so it's never really gets picked up anywhere in the cult world unless I put it there. So I thought maybe if I change the title of that podcast, not change the format, not change really what I'm doing, because all the content is perfectly fine and wonderful. But maybe if I change the title to something like Speaking of Cults, ... right? Speaking of cults. And here's our topic for this week. And not all the videos, the podcasts I've ever done have only been about cults, but certainly 98% of them have been in one fashion or another. And so wouldn't it be more appropriate and probably get more, notice in where I'm trying to go by putting, some kind of title there that reflects that this is talking about cults, right? So that's my idea. I'm throwing it out there just to get some feedback from you guys. I'm pretty liking that title. I am also wondering, though, what you guys would think about possibly changing this show as well. It's been critical Q&A from the beginning. It's a good title. I like the title. But again, doesn't necessarily really point at all to what I'm talking about. It could, critical Q&A could mean anything, and people do not immediately connect it with critical thinking. And I do not only talk about critical thinking. In fact, that's really not something I talk about a lot compared to how much I talk about cult stuff and cult recovery and coercive control. I could call it coercive Q&A. But I was thinking cult Q&A or, critical cult Q&A would fit right in there, but it might be a little bit too much alliteration. Might not quite roll off the tongue quite well. You guys let me know if I'm totally off the rails and thinking that I need to change the title of this channel or this show. Let me know. But of course, you guys are always great at giving me some constructive criticism and feedback and stuff that I really do appreciate. And those are my thoughts on that. The other thing that I need to throw out at you guys is I was actually asked to do this, and I thought, wow, this is great. I have certain projects and certain things I want to move forward on my channel, but I'm not in a position right now to do them. Financially, I'm just not, right? I have a certain level of support that I get through Patreon, and I have a certain level of support that I get from you guys through YouTube memberships or through donations or money you throw my way, which is awesome. It's always appreciated, and it helps keep the lights on, and it helps keep the roof over my head. And all of this has been working out so far. But I would like to see about taking this to the next level. And it was suggested to me that I put together, well, what would my ideal studio be? What would I need? And so I put a list together on Amazon. And there is a link now in the description section here. And I'll display it on the screen here for you, but it's just going to be a bunch of numbers and letters. But the link will be in the description section up at the top. And if you want to contribute to or help directly with me kind of upgrading my situation here and doing better and being able to give you guys better content, I'd really appreciate it. It would be awesome. And it would be, the Shelton Ideal Studio. That's kind of how I'm positioning it. I put a sort of a wish list together on Amazon. That's what I did. It's got the camera that I have right now that I'm talking to is actually perfectly fine. I don't need to change that up. But this guy is about to break down this laptop I'm looking at right now. There's some other equipment that I could use that would up the game enormously or upgrade the equipment that I have to, again, bring more features and content to you. So anyway, if you're interested in contributing in that direction, then the wish list is there. And if some of those things you want to contribute to, but you don't want to pay for the whole thing, because obviously a laptop's, a lot. Some of the other things are, a few $100 items. And so maybe, you want to contribute a little bit in that direction, but not totally. That's fine. You can PayPal me, you can Venmo me, you can buy me a coffee. I have links to all of that below. And there is a Linktree link in my description down below also, which will link you to everything, all the socials and all of the support websites. So that all being said, I really appreciate your guys' support. I just can't say that enough. And I hope that we can make this ideal studio happen, because things would be different. I'll show you. You'll see. And I might even add a few more things to that list as we go. Because, for example, I'm thinking right now, I never did get a green screen on that list. And if I had a green screen going on behind me, then, it would be a different situation. That kind of thing, right? So we'll see how this goes. But there it is for you. And that all being said, now let's get on with your questions. Carrie, what is your opinion on the New York rescue workers detoxification project? If by chance you're unaware of the project, there's a wiki page with a synopsis. I feel like Tom Cruise, and through him, the Church of Scientology, took advantage of 9/11 first responders. To manipulate these heroes into completing the purification rundown literally makes my blood boil. As a result, some have joined the Church of Scientology, and sadly, but not unsurprisingly, some have died because they did not seek appropriate medical care. I'm also suspicious of how they were able to obtain just shy of $1 million of public funding to support this repugnant project. Maybe it's because I've been taken advantage of in many ways throughout my life, or that I fight for anyone that is used or manipulated, but this whole thing seems all kinds of wrong. Am I the only one who is bothered by this? I can't be. No, Carrie, you are absolutely right. You are not the only one bothered by this. And you're right also that there is a Wikipedia page on this. I happen to be very familiar with this project and was around in Scientology and the Sea Org when it was happening and being promoted. And we all thought this was an amazing project and that Tom Cruise was leading the charge once again for the 9/11 first responders and really doing them a solid by bringing this detox program to New York, where it was sort of put out. And yes, there was lots and lots of public funding used for this. And a lot of that money went right into the pockets of Scientology and Scientologists through the front group that Scientology runs called the Association for Better Living and Education, or ABLE. ABLE. This is a Scientology front group, and they received an awful lot of money. I think 10% of the money on this thing, according to the Wikipedia page, as well as individual Scientologists who made this thing happen. Tom Cruise was the sort of vanguard front-runner spokesperson for this, and Tom Cruise is basically an asshole. So if you think he was doing these people a solid and it was a really good thing he was doing, it wasn't. It was Tom Cruise showboating and showing off his superior wisdom and intellect and technology, rather than, and by technology, I mean the Scientology methodology of let's sweat out the drugs. But Tom Cruise is an idiot. He has no idea what he's talking about when it comes to medicine and medical care. He has no idea. And he will sit there and tear into Matt Lauer and insult Brooke Shields and talk all about how damaging psychiatric medications are and how doctors have no idea and how, the Scientologists are the ones who have to take responsibility because we know what to do. No, they don't. They so don't know what to do that they actually kill people with their methodology. So if you see me get a little passionate about this, this is why. It rankles to no end. And this whole project was an encapsulation of what happens when you give Scientologists too much rope, when you give them too much leash, right? When you let them run, they hurt people. Because L. Ron Hubbard was not a good man, and the purification program is pseudoscientific junk. It's worse than homeopathy. I mean, and homeopathy is like, if any of y'all are engaging in homeopathy, you're just being taken advantage of. Then there are so many alternative medicine, traditional medicine practices out there. I could just go on a roll about this. But going back to this New York detox program, the way that they got it through, here's Tom Cruise talking about Tom Cruise. Of all the people in the world who have the fucking nerve to tell the EPA that they don't know what they're talking about, it would be Tom Cruise. He said, according to what was quoted here in the wiki page, that the EPA had stated after the World Trade Center attack that the air was safe to breathe. There was certain levels, and they can measure this stuff. And they said, okay, cool, we're clear. And Cruise is seen dismissing the EPA's all clear. Quote, "Of course, as a Scientologist, you go, that's a lie. Outright lie. Liar. Fine. Finally, you say, damn it, just go there and do it. Put it there. Let's go. Here's the money. Let's go. Let's just get one person treated. I can't sleep another night." Like, this was a moral outrage to Tom Cruise. Why? Because he's a moron. That's why. And because he thinks he knows better than everybody around him, to be honest. So So he goes off on a tear to save the firefighters of New York with this purification program. And the response, again, laid out in this article here from medical professionals, is this is not good. This is not a good idea. An investigation by the New York Press asked a number of independent doctors about the evidence for the purification rundown. None of them endorsed the program's effectiveness, and some explicitly described it as dangerous. Several said that no peer-reviewed research on the rundown had been published in any medical journal, because it hasn't. The only thing the Church of Scientology has to endorse Hubbard's pseudoscientific crap are Scientologists who have the letters MD after their name. And they're Scientologists first and medical doctors second. And they will endorse the program. We saw a couple of medical doctors in Scientology write testimonials or endorsements for the program, but no research, no studies, no actual peer-reviewed evidentiary backup or of any of the claims. And in fact, when biochemists and medical doctors who are not connected with Scientology review Hubbard's materials, they scoff at it, they laugh at it, they think it's ridiculous, because it is. So when it comes to actually helping people in need, people who are desperate, people who have issues and problems, this purification rundown isn't going to solve anything for them, because you don't sweat out your asthma. You don't sweat out toxins that have infected your lungs. You do not sweat out LSD. You do not sweat out lead paint. This is not how your body gets rid of toxic materials. It has an internal system for doing that. And if it's overloaded or overrun because you have been exposed to too much radiation, too much lead, too much paint, too much ash in the air from 9/11, then if your body is overwhelmed by that, then you need to go to a doctor and you need to get actual medical treatments that are going to get that stuff out of your system, if such treatments even exist, because the fact of the matter is there might not be solutions to certain problems when it comes to toxic materials in your body. And it might just be that, oh, damn, and 9/11 was a catastrophic tragedy, which put so much dangerous particles in the air that a lot of people were really damaged by this, some irreparably. And Cruz, in his, magnanimous stupidity, comes flying in there, seeing an opportunity to bring Scientology to the situation so that he can save these firefighters' lives. And the fucking real stupid tragedy of this. I'm just so, I mean, it's been 20 years ago and I'm still upset about this, because he was sincere about it. I mean, the stupidity about this is that Tom Cruise isn't even a con man. He's just got his head so far up his ass that he actually thinks this was the solution to the problem. And of course it wasn't. And when it didn't solve the problem, where was Cruise then? Right? When these firefighters start dying off, where's he then? He's moved on. He doesn't care. Right? Oh, well, guess they did it wrong. Oh, well, guess, there was some problem or whatever. And off he goes, right? So I think I'm kind of expressing here my opinion about, this whole thing, as you asked, because it was a great example of what not to do in a society to deal with a very real problem. Turn to Scientology for answers. That is absolutely the wrong thing to do 100% of the time. And this program was a picture perfect example of why not, why you would not turn to Scientology. Wasted money, wasted time, people dying, resources gone that could have been utilized to bring some real help to some of these people or some real medical interventions, and instead they get L. Ron Hubbard's crap. So, so none of the official organizations connected with this thing really did stand on two legs and go, yes, this is the thing. At the end of the day, everybody realized it just was a waste of effort and time, as far as I can tell. But unfortunately, the fallout from that was just more damage. So there you go. Irene, I was listening to your podcast with apostate Alex, and it was stated that second gens take a lot longer to recover from Scientology. Having also read Combating Cult Mind Control by Stephen Hassan, I wondered if this could be partially caused by lack of development of an authentic self free of cult influence during childhood and adolescence. I would imagine it is easier for an adult convert to return to a pre-indoctrination self, but a second gen might lack a coherent, non-indoctrinated self to return to once they leave. As someone with infinitely more experience in this realm, what are your thoughts? Okay, great question. And thank you very much for asking me about this, because this is a point I've wanted to clarify with people. And I think I've talked about this a little bit before, but the second gen pre-cult personality thing is it has a limited use as an analogy, because it's not like there's some light switch in your head that you are turning on and off in terms of your pre-cult personality and your post-cult personality and the cult personality. Like you have sort of three different versions of yourself there, and it's not a light switch situation where you sort of dim the cult personality and the pre-cult personality comes back. That's not really. It's a useful, simple sort of look at an incredibly complicated picture. And it breaks down when you start talking about second generation cult members, because the idea of a pre-cult personality has limited workability for second generation members, because every second generation cult member has a different experience of how indoctrinated and accepting they were of the cult beliefs. Every single person is individual in this regard. This is why we all have different personalities. We develop different ways. We go through phases of development. We have various needs, and those needs are either being met or not being met. And that affects our attachments. That affects, in other words, our relationships and our ability to have relationships, how we define relationships and how we think about them. A child who grows up in a very abusive home with a lot of abuse and sort of trauma is going to have relationships that are not as trusting, that are not as close or intimate as a child who is raised in a caring home where he or she experiences love and intimacy and tenderness, where their attachments, their relationships are going to be tighter and different. This is just one aspect of development, is relationships, right? There's also how one goes about viewing the world. And when one is in an abusive environment where they are exposed too early to violence, to sexual conduct or activity, this will absolutely mess with their heads in very significant ways, because their bodies and their minds are not yet ready for that level of activity. This is all about stages of development, and you can skip ahead on these, and Scientology really specializes in this by this insane idea that children are adults in little bodies and they can be treated just like adults. And they can't. It's not that way at all. Children are absolutely not adults. So it's it's very, very important that parents have an understanding of that. And Scientology parents don't. And so they will just automatically mistreat and abuse their kids just through that. And but every Scientology parent is different from every other Scientology parent. This is where nuance comes in, and it has to. Because if we're going to talk honestly about personality development and how you recover from a cult, then we have to acknowledge that it's not black and white. There are all kinds of variations here, variables in this picture. So I, for example, didn't really hardcore get involved in Scientology till I was 15. I was all about Scientology growing up in terms of learning about it, accepting its principles, its understanding the terminology. But it wasn't like I was all in when I was 8 or 9 years old. Nobody was recruiting me for the Sea Org. Nobody was trying to get me on staff. And I didn't have that experience as a child. Other Scientology kids did. And some of them even went into the Sea Org as young as 10 or 11 years old because their parents were irresponsible boobs who had no idea what their job was. And they let the kid go off into a very hostile and dangerous environment in the Sea Org as children because they're just adults in little bodies, right? And they were probably in the Sea Org in their last life, so they're just going back. I mean, the motto of the Sea Org, after all, is "We come back." Yeah, that's right. It's like that. So I'm going on about all of this to kind of offer up just a few of the things that introduce a lot of variation amongst second-generation cult members. So I could arguably talk about a pre-cult personality, and then I could talk about how my personality radically changed after I got involved, after I joined staff, and especially after I joined the Sea Org. Every one of those stages of involvement and diving in deeper into Scientology for me led me to further and further personality changes. And by the time I was in the Sea Org for a few years, I was about as hardcore of an asshole as you would care to meet. And I was a full-blown, fully believing, fully saluting Sea Org Scientologist. And I didn't think there was anything in this world that was more important than Scientology. And I absolutely would have taken a bullet for David Miscavige. And I absolutely would have disconnected from my parents if Scientology had absolutely insisted that I do that. Fortunately, I was able to navigate those waters, and I avoided disconnecting from my parents, and thank God, because they were there for me when I left. So my experience is very different from every other SPTV second-gen Scientologist you're going to meet or see or hear about. Some of them were practically bottle fed on Scientology and had to do ethics conditions and had to do the whole misunderstood word definition thing and had to do TRs when they were 5, and were treated as though they were just, again, little adults. We have Ian Rafalco's story of basically negligence. His parents all but ignored him and treated him like total dirt until he took an interest in Scientology, and then they started validating him. So that's a different experience. So I hope with what I'm saying here, we can see that this construct of the pre-cult personality is incredibly context specific. It's incredibly individual to a person. And each individual person is going to be dealt with, hopefully, by their therapist or by, their education process and recovery differently. So you asked if this could partially, that second gens take a lot longer to recover from Scientology. The reason I said that is because yes, there is this concept of a pre-Scientology existence that they can kind of fall back to. But the goal of therapy and the goal of recovery is not to send you backwards in time. And this is kind of one of the points of departure, I guess I have, from the construct that Hassan has put forward. I don't think Steve is saying this has to be the case, but I've seen it interpreted this way and I've seen it talked about this way. So I'm not criticizing the model. I'm simply criticizing how some people will talk about or interpret it. And this is that you have to somehow send your body or your brain and your personality backwards in time to before you join the cult. And only then can you move forward in your progress as you develop through the rest of your life. And that's not really true. That's not how this works. You don't just take a slice of your life, your cult years, and put it in a box and stick it in the bottom of the closet in the back dark corner, and then say that never happened or didn't happen, or I'm not going to deal with it, or I'm not going to have to, or none of that's going to have any effect on me because I'm going to dive back to my pre-cult personality, right? That obviously is silly. It's a silly idea. And yet I have seen some people who seem to think that's what recovery is, and it's not. You have to integrate these things together into who you are now. This is my opinion. It's 100% my opinion. And I acknowledge I am not a trained or licensed therapist. So my knowledge of recovery techniques and treatment modalities is limited to that degree. I am not claiming to be an expert when it comes to how to go about treating people, but I am speaking from my own recovery process and from helping other people with it. And having done that work, my approach is very much one of integration, not ignorance or denial. And again, I'm not all implying that is what Hassan is saying with the bite model or with the pre-cult personality thing. I'm saying that some people read it that way. Just want to be super clear about that. So when I talk about integration is that you have to own what happened in the cult. And you have to come to a place where you can be okay with that and be at peace with that, because it happened to you and it's part of your life. And it's also part of your life experiences, and you can learn from it and you can grow from that. And your pre-cult activity is also part of your development and also part of who you are. And it's all part of what makes you who you are. So rather than this concept of diving back to the past, I think a healthy recovery program would be education on what happened to you and how it was done to you, because if you don't understand that, you're never going to recover from it. It's just going to be a mystery to you. You're not going to understand what happened. And if you don't understand what happened, you'll never be able to stop it from happening to you again. This is just crucial. So education is very much part of this, dealing with the trauma and the emotions of it. And there's all kinds of treatments that can be utilized to do that. There's emotion-focused therapy. There's trauma-focused therapy. There's a laundry list of stuff you can do. And everybody, again, is individual and unique in this. And this is why the therapist and the individual will figure it out for themselves. But broadly speaking, for second gens, they've got a lot of catch up to do. And some of them who were hardcore traumatized, hardcore abused from an early age, there's no pre-cult anything for them. And so what are they going to do? Well, they're going to do the same thing I'm talking about. They're going to figure out what happened to them. They're going to figure out how it happened to them and why. And they're going to understand their role in it and the role of their oppressors and their victimizers, because there's a certain point where that switch kind of flips a little bit, and you go as a cult member from a victim to a victimizer. And that's part of the whole recovery, is figuring that part out for yourself and sorting out your own responsibilities in that. That's just it just seems so common sense for me to seem so obvious to me that I don't know that that's really a really debatable point. But it's not something that you're going to be doing on day one, right? Day 1, 2, and 3 is I was a victim, and absolutely you were. And so we got to deal with that. And we got to look at all the ways you were victimized and all the ways it happened and all the trauma that came with that. And when you break that down and you figure it out and you get it dealt with, and you can kind of move on from that. But without then getting some education, you're just going to fall into another trap, right? You're just going to fall for it again. So, and sometimes people even go back to the same group they escaped from, because they don't sort these things out for themselves. So anyway, so this is just some thoughts, commentary on this off the top of my head from responding to your question, Irene. There's probably hours of talking that could be done about this or figure out on it and stuff, but these are just my kind of immediate thoughts about, paths of recovery and how we walk those paths. And nothing I am saying here should in any way be taken as some kind of criticism of anything y'all have done out there that has worked for you. You know, if you did something with pre-cult stuff, or you did something that didn't quite align with what I'm talking about, and it worked for you and you feel better and your life's moving forward as a result, great. That just speaks to what I was saying about the individuality of each of us cult survivors, and how, you know, we have our own paths to walk moving forward. So I hope all that gives some insight or help or clarification of where I'm coming from on it, at least. And thanks for asking. Dustin, I've got a question for you in regards to, quote, the way out is the way through, end quote. I've done some research to see who actually came up with this quote, and I see that it was Robert Frost. My question is, though, how did Scientology incorporate this? Does it mean that you have to go through painful experiences, i.e. punishment, either for not getting your stats up or just being a handful in general? I feel like the spiritual, and in my opinion, the right meaning, is to face your problems, no matter how big or small, and just go through them, and therefore learning how to deal with things better in life. Thanks for all that you do to help people learn about the awful and stolen practices of Scientology. Dustin, this is a great question. And what you're actually quoting from is one of the 3 principles of Scientology auditing, actually Dianetics and Scientology auditing, any auditing. The way out is the way through. Get the PC through it. And what turns it on will turn it off. Those are the 3 guiding principles of all auditing in Scientology. And that is the context that this phrase is used in Scientology. So the point is in Scientology that it's kind of similar to your thought of what this phrase means, but in an auditing context, where if you're having a hard time in an auditing session, and people often do because they are being forced, they're sort of being pushed forcibly back into traumatic episodes in their lives. And that trauma can create some fascinating and very, very surprising responses in people. And they can get all over the place emotionally and even physically, and they can even experience pains and problems with their body. There's a lot of stuff that can happen in auditing sessions as you're throwing people around up and down their life track, their life experiences. Hubbard says that you got to trust the process. That this was used and utilized in a reinforcing method of just do what I say, right? Hubbard has a methodology for auditing. You do this, and then you do this, and you do this, and you do this, and you'll get through it. And as long as you do those things, you'll get through it. So the way out is the way through. You don't blow the session. You don't stop the session. You don't run out of the session. You don't get scared because the pre-clear is sitting in the chair in the fetal position, sucking his thumb, and he's a 45-year-old grown man, right, who has returned back to his birth or something, or childhood, and there he is manifesting being a child. And you don't go, oh, gee, this was too much. Okay, right, and run out the door. And in the 1950s, more than a few auditors did that because they were like, whoa, what's this? I don't know how to deal with this. And Hubbard would say, look, the way out is the way through. What turns it on will turn it off. So if the process of doing the auditing is what made this person do this, continuing the auditing and getting them through it is the only way you're going to deal with it. Now, of course, I would have a few other things to say about the efficacy of Scientology auditing, and that the way out is the way through. I would not necessarily agree with that at this point, but I was just explaining it from a Scientologist's point of view, as L. Ron Hubbard explains it. So, you know, I didn't actually know it was a Robert Frost quote either. That's kind of awesome. Thanks for looking that up. But that's basically what it means and how it's used. It obviously goes over into the Scientology slanguage as well, where they will take these phrases and apply them to the rest of their life. So, of course, you know, if you're having a problem in your life, you might, as a Scientologist, go, oh, well, you know, the way out's the way through. Got to get through it. Got to face it. Got to do it. And fine, right? And if that helps them confront their problems or deal with the problems that they run into in life, then fine. Maybe that's helpful or useful for them, as opposed to running away from their problems or not dealing with them. But in that sense, it's just another mantra in Scientology. So that's what I can say about that. Leo Perez. What do Scientologists think of all the latest news of the whistleblowers telling Congress about the UFO stuff? All right, Leo, well, I'm not sure what Scientologists think because I'm not in touch with any of them. But what I can tell you is what I would think most of them would be thinking is, well, duh. I mean, Scientologists pretty much know or feel they know, especially if they've had a bunch of auditing, that there are civilizations on other planets and in other places in this galaxy. Now, not all Scientologists go there, and some of them couldn't care less, but a lot of them get really into this stuff. And so they don't necessarily become UFO watchers and that kind of thing, but they will acknowledge, oh yeah, sure. Oh yeah, people, aliens are around and they come around and they flit by the planet sometimes and that kind of thing. Hell, I had a guy in Scientology tell me one time that he was in an auditing session, auditor sitting across from him, and he somehow felt a presence sitting over as the pre-clear. And he looks up and he says, there's a spaceship up above the building watching us right now. Because this was his awareness as an exterior Thetan, that he was seeing this UFO watching their auditing session. Right? And that somehow this might be dangerous because now the aliens might know Scientology is here and we're rehabilitating and salvaging Thetans, right? And all the alien civilizations, all they know how to do is enslave people and enslave Thetans, right? Kind of think of Ghostbusters. You'll get the picture, right? Like you have these electronics and this technology to catch ghosts. Well, a Thetan is a ghost. So the aliens, the implanters, the nasty invader forces that Hubbard talks about are like the Ghostbusters. They're coming to trap you and stick you in a vault, right? As a Thetan, and you'll be trapped there. That's no good, right? You don't want that. So anyway, I digress a little bit here, but this is all just the fun and games of Scientology, science fiction. And a lot of Scientologists really get into this stuff, so much so that they actually literally start believing in the fact that they're being watched and surveilled by aliens. So from that point of view, I'm pretty sure there's a lot of Scientologists who are quite anxious to see proof of and UFO presence here on Earth and all of that. So anyway, there you go. Howard Goodman. One thing I don't know if I've heard discussed is whether a Scientologist ever enters into a relationship with a non-Church of Scientology person without attempting to recruit them. Oh yeah, absolutely. Now, it doesn't happen very often though. In fact, I can literally count on one hand, okay? And not even having to have to use all 5 fingers. I can think of 3 cases in 27 years of being in Scientology where somebody got to the OT levels. No, I can only think of one case where somebody actually got all the way to OT8 and their husband was a full-blown Christian. And they actually even went to church every Sunday. OT8. She loved her husband. And there was nothing nefarious going on there. She was a very nice woman. This was in Minneapolis, actually. And I was flabbergasted. I was a Sea Org member in Minneapolis at the Twin Cities Org, and I could not believe that she was OT8. And I didn't even know what OT8 meant because I was just clear, right? But I had, Scientologists have a lot of high standards for OTs, and they lay all kinds of expectations on them. And so the idea that somebody could be OT8 and be married to a WOG, I mean, again, a very disgraceful, awful term, but this is the term Scientologists use. And it is used in an invalidative and insulting way. And that is exactly how I was using it with her own husband. Well, she didn't appreciate that. She didn't, give me the time of day, but she didn't kind of lay into me, but she did say, well, look, he's my husband. I love him, but he is not interested in Scientology. He doesn't have a problem with me doing it. He's always supported me in doing it. He's paid for my bridge. So, who was I to come along and tell her what was what? She was perfectly happy as an OT8 with her Christian husband. Only one time I saw that. The other couple times I saw people were lower level Scientologists whose husband or spouse or whatever was not a Scientologist. And, that happens. And you can't force it. You can never really force it. But you do have sort of these conversations and you kind of look at them a little like, really? They like at all? They're not interested in anything, And it's like, no, they're not. And we had to deal with that. But it was always sort of with distrust. We always had this sort of, about the, that's a little weird, especially the higher you go. So that was kind of how it was in the Scientology culture and world on that. And that was my experience with it. All right. Well, we have reached the end of our show for this week. I want to thank you very much for coming around and watching me gabber on about all of this. I want to thank you for your channel support. I want to thank you for your viewership. And I hope that you will like, share, subscribe, get this around on the interwebs. All right. Thanks, guys. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.